evening, everybody. Welcome to the Craft Cannabis Summit. My name is Dean van Schalkwyk, and I'm going to be invigilating tonight's chat. For those of you who don't know me, I represent Marijuana SA, but tonight, Chiba Cannabis Academy is presenting this awesome summit, and I'm going to be joined by some very interesting guests. I have a guest all the way out from Humboldt who's going to be sharing some his journey with us, and then I have some awesome local lineup as well. I just want to say a big thank you to our prize sponsor for this session, which is Dutch Passion Seed Company. Dutch Passion is one of the longest standing seed banks in the world. They have incredibly high quality genetics, and personally I'm a big fan as well. And for some of you who are listening tonight, there are some prizes involved. And then I also just want to say a big thank you to the key partners for this webinar, which are the Druids Garden and Grow One Africa. But to cut into the juicy information, I'm going to be joined this evening by, firstly, by Robbie Hernstad from Villa Paradiso Cannabis Farms. He's a South African who is now farming commercially in the USA, and I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about his journey. So let's wait for him to hop on.
Hi, Dean.
Hey, Robbie, how are you doing?
Great, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight's webinar. Just to cut straight into it, as I introduced you, obviously are a South African. It's been probably a crazy journey getting to where you are today. So I thought it would be a nice way to start, just to hear a little bit about your journey and how you ended up doing what you are doing today from South Africa. So let's hear a little bit more, Robbie.
Well, about 20 few years ago, I left South Africa. While in South Africa, I was in the textile business. We had a family business producing sewing thread, large factories, and obviously, with the political situation, we had made our move to the United States. Yes. Arriving here, in this particular, it was quite a nervous situation because we didn't know what we were going to do. I was always interested in the textile business.
Yes.
And through my textile business, education, came across hemp farming. So it was something in the back of my mind always. Of course, things, don't really work out the way that you always feel they're going to. So 10 years later, I then jumped 10 years later, where a friend of mine out of the blue asked me to come and help him on his farm. And that's basically where my journey in the cannabis industry began. So it was about 15 years ago that we got into cannabis, and starting at the bottom, learning everything. Quite a long, interesting journey.
Yes, I can only imagine.
That brings me up to date.
And in the cannabis industry, I know you're based out in Humboldt. It's obviously been a very interesting. 15 years is a long time. You've obviously seen, wow, we've got some images to look at as well for everyone. So there's Robbie in the flesh. But tell us a little bit about how. Maybe I'd be quite interested just a little bit about how, your experience in the cannabis industry has changed over the years. And, just everyone in South Africa is in such a period where we're all so excited to get to this point. So give us a little bit of, what it was actually like. It wasn't all easy, I'm sure. So, let's share a little bit with our viewer base this evening.
Sure. So, basically, when I got into the cannabis industry, it was all underground. And they had a program called, in California, the 215 program, which was a cooperative program, which allowed us to operate legally, through a cooperative. So that's where it started. It was quite interesting because you had helicopters flying around looking for grows in the mountains, busting them, shutting them down, kind of the guerrilla days, if you want to call it that. Very interesting for me being from South Africa, because I kind of had that feeling, able to handle that, so it was, yes. We were deep in the forest, growing under huge trees. Any movement would basically send us scurrying away. So those were the early days. As things became more mainstream and the cooperative came more, accepted, yes. Things were a little different at that point, obviously, because, we could be more in the open. Anyway, still a little strange and still a little, nerve-wracking every day walking into the farm. I mean, understand that this is not a nice open farm area. These are small pockets that are cut out within the forest.
Yes,
So
incredible.
yes, very interesting. Lighting, was a big problem. No one wanted to cut trees down. Everyone wore hoodies, hiding and scurrying around, working at night, all strange events. Anyway, so then let's jump forward a little bit to the
Yes, please.
non-guerrilla days when, we basically, think the internet's getting going with cannabis. Everything's more open. We're able to learn a lot more. And I was lucky enough to work under some veteran growers, people who have been doing this for a long time, learned all the ins and outs, all the tricks, everything. Anyway, so yeah, and then we were able to, it was still undercover because it wasn't a legal entity. It was really a cooperative, as I say, and you're really producing cannabis for people that need it on a medical basis. So that was how it worked out. It wasn't a big scale. Things did ramp up. They did ramp up definitely. And let's jump to today, because this is where it all culminated to be.
Yes,
and
please.
Very, you've got lots of genetics out there. I'm just jumping around here, but lots of genetics from this particular place that I work in, Humboldt, which is the epicenter.
Yes.
You've got big farms. Obviously in California or the United States, you can't send all the cannabis produced here stays within the state. So it's very state specific.
Oh,
And
really? Wow, that's
California
incredible.
has a great, yeah, it is pretty interesting right now. As we become closer to the federally legal, then there should be some more, cross-state business
Yes.
occurring. Back in the day, there was a lot of cross-state business going on, all underground, and I'm
Yes,
sure it
yes.
still happens today because, not everything's legal at this point in terms of, other growers, I would say. But it's very interesting up here because the marijuana that comes out of here, the cannabis that comes out of here is premium. It really is what you would call like a boutique style cannabis. However, it's mainstream accepted. So, that's where we are now. We are in the Emerald Triangle. It's where 3 counties meet, and that's where it all happens. The mountain I'm on is called the Palo Verde, which are the Green Mountains. Where it got its name, I'm not too sure, but it's sort of coincidental that here we are,
Yeah,
green
growing the
all
green
around
in the
us.
growing the green in the Green Mountains.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, yeah, Robbie, you've had
Um,
an incredible journey. And just a little bit before we bring on the other guests today, what are you guys farming? And just tell us a little bit about, the kinds of stuff that you're producing today, maybe a few strains, before we move on to the topic for this evening.
yeah. We do 2 types of farming. We do the outdoor and the mixed light. Basically, mixed light being greenhouse, where you would manipulate the light using large tarpaulin covers. So we grow different strains from the indica, sativa, rudalis, mostly hybrids.
Yes.
Rudalis very, very interesting because obviously it's Durban poison based, and we all love Durban poison, and it's very interesting to be out here and have that. So
Yes.
the strains we're growing right now are Wedding Cake, Gorilla Glue, obviously OG, which is Original Gangster. Then you've got your sour diesels and crosses from all of those. We grow usually about 5 different strains across the board, mostly hybrid. Hybrid has become a very popular way across the board, obviously, for people using.
You're getting the best of both then, I suppose. And that's a good point. Thank you so much, Robbie, for sharing a little bit about your journey with us thus far. But let's get a bit more of tonight's conversation going, which is a conversation on nutrients, lighting, and pest management. And we are actually going to be joined by 3 other guests this evening. Firstly, we have Kwanda Mtetwa from Cuban Zulu Grows. Kwanda?
Sorry, I
Hello.
lost you there for a moment. Bad signal.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kwanda, we can hear you. Take it away. Do you want to just introduce yourself quickly for us, please?
Awesome. I'm Kwanda Mtetwa. I'm the founder and main employee at Cuban Zulu Grows. I grow high THC strains. I have about 5 to 7 years experience growing. It wasn't always indoor. But of recently, I've been just growing indoor, and I'm actually at a stage where I specialize specifically in indoor cultivation. Strains, it really doesn't matter much for me. It's just about what the purpose of the grow is, whether it's for personal or cultivating on behalf of someone else. But yeah, basically high THC strains, hybrids, indicas, sativas, no ruderalis, and yeah, I grow from seed. So there's a lot of clone growers and seed growers. I do seed specifically.
Let's save it of the rest of your info for the chat before we move on. Let's get our other guests on as well. Nextly, I'm going to be welcoming Mama Kaya from Mama Kaya Farms. Let's say hello, Mama Kaya. Hello.
Hi there, guys. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks to you. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself for all of our listeners this evening.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm basically not as fancy as you guys. I don't have any title. I'm just a homesteader. I've been into vegetable gardens and growing cannabis for a few years now. And the more sustainability I've got, then the better. So yeah, just a homesteader.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And then finally, we have Daniel Perkas from White Glove Botanicals joining us as our fourth guest for this evening. Welcome, Daniel. I also believe Daniel is tuning in from the new Hotbox studio. So yeah, Daniel, please introduce yourselves for all of our listeners.
How's it, guys? Sure. Back when I was a youngster, my grandfather used to grow, and he used to grow hydroponics. So I was exposed from a youngster. And then just growing up, I was
Daniel, just going to stop you quick. I think you're having a bit of a mic issue. Maybe if you want to lean a bit closer to the mic.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
Guys.
If you please want to just restart for us, Daniel. Apologies.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically, I've been exposed in the cannabis world for many, many years. From when I was a youngster, it was my parents smoked, my father smoked, and then my grandfather smoked, and he grew, and he was a hydroponic grower. So I took to hydroponics when I was a youngster, and I loved growing things normally and hydroponically. Then, as things went on, I started growing for myself, and by growing for myself, I obviously wanted to always make sure that it was grown the best as I could for myself. So from there, I'll just keep learning more and more about the plant and about how to better grow it, whether it be indoor, outdoor, under greenhouses, shade, wherever it might be. That basically has now led me to my career, where I now am setting up cannabis facilities, advising people, basically making sure people can grow the plant as best as they possibly could in order to get what they want out of it. Because obviously nowadays there's a lot of expectation and, how could you say, level that you have to meet up to. So yeah, yes. I'm just trying to serve the plant as well.
Awesome. Welcome. Well, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. As everyone knows, our topic is lighting, nutrients, and pest management. We have, it's three broad subjects. So let's see how much we can cover this evening. But I think a nice place to start would probably be on our lighting. We have different kinds of lighting required indoors, outdoors, as Robbie was saying, if you're growing mixed light, it's also important as well, or outdoor straight. So I don't know if one of you wants to sort of maybe Daniel, you would be good to start with talking about a little bit about indoor lighting, and we can take the conversation from there and see where it flows.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so indoor lighting. Wow.
Yeah, so just let me rephrase that. As lighting in South Africa at the moment, or in the cannabis industry, it seems to be going two ways. We've got sort of HID, which is maybe the ceramic metal halide and the double-endeds, which are doing really well. And then in the homegrown space, we're seeing quite a surgence of sort of the Samsung LM301Hs and the sort of quantum board kind of style of lights. What are everyone's thoughts of that, or sort of the way that indoor lighting is looking in the commercial space? Maybe Daniel, and then maybe Kwanda on the home space currently. Daniel, you can start.
Okay, well, basically on the commercial side of things, I mean, the larger scale sort of things, people they need to have power in order to make sure their plants are going to be growing to their full optimum growth. So a lot of guys are going with metal halide, they're with HID lights. So generally your 1000-watt HPS lighting. That's a very common light that's used in the industry, and it has been for many years because it is proven and it's done its time. So people know that when they use that light, they're going to get what they want. But there is now a much bigger presence of LEDs because obviously it's a much better costing in terms of savings in terms of your electricity. And in South Africa, we need to save as much electricity as possible. So they are bringing LED into the commercial space, and they do work very, very well. But yeah, there's, it depends on what you are trying to, or what your budget would be and what you're trying to achieve, I think, into what lights you're going to use.
Excellent. And Kwanda, you were saying that you're predominantly an indoor grower these days. What kinds of lights are you currently using, and kind of what has your lighting journey been indoors as sort of more of a home grower?
Right now, I'm using a variety of lights. I would just use one, which would be HPS. But when you're cultivating at home and basically using that kind of a capacity, you don't really want to run such high electricity costs. So I use CFLs like in the early stage germination and LEDs to veg, and then I flower with my HPSs. However, as a home grower capacity at this current level, what's best right now is the LEDs because of how efficient they are in terms of power. Power as well as heat, because with the HPSs and our climate, it becomes a bit of an issue running lights that generate a lot of heat. You end up having to add a air conditioner into your space, and obviously that adds to your electricity as well. Currently what I'm seeing a lot in the South African industry is LEDs, your quantum boards, your Samsung diodes, those type of LEDs, like those, I like to nickname them spider net type lights. And yeah, that's basically what it's looking like in our industry right now.
And Robbie, you were speaking a little bit in your intro about mixed light, which obviously is greenhouses with supplementary lighting. Seeing we're on the subject of lighting, maybe you could fill us in a little bit as to kind of the technology that's been used predominantly in sort of mixed lighting setups for you guys.
Sure. Well, in the early stages, when for the seedlings or the baby clones, you would use a supplemental lighting because of the amount of lighting in terms of our weather, in terms of our sun. We've got very short days in the beginning when we start off. So most people are starting right now. So we do use a supplemental light, which is a fluorescent-based light. It's very energy efficient. It's called a T5. I don't know if you're familiar with it there.
Yes.
But basically looks like a string of fluorescence. We use that for a couple of months, and then as the time takes over with the sun, we will obviously just switch over to sun. But I just wanted to add one. Here in the United States, there's a major shift towards the LEDs. They're very efficient these days with the new products coming out, and I've seen a lot of sister companies that we work closely with that are all indoor definitely making that shift, A, for maintenance, and B, because of the cost. And you don't have to have the supplemental air conditioning, as Cuban mentioned.
Yes, exactly. And Mama Kaya, I believe you're predominantly an outdoor grower. Do you grow, or from what I could see on your Instagram, this is our first time meeting everyone. So I don't know if you would like to add to this topic a little bit, or if you do use any light, supplementary kind of lighting or lightings in your grows. Tell us a little bit more about your style.
Yeah, I generally just use a supplementary lighting on the vegging girls at one specific spot to get them up to a certain height.
Yes.
Basic LED floodlights, really, 100-watt LED floodlights, and that just keeps the girls awake until it turns off, and just gives me that time, to play with.
Yes. Nice, proper sort of cheap LEDs you can buy from that are waterproof, are great for the outdoors, everyone. And I think, leading from this conversation, let's say, Mama Kaya, you mentioned a little bit about sort of the sustainability and when you're growing, you're aiming to be sustainable as possible. So I think let's jump through to our next topic, which is nutrients and pest management. What kind of grow style are you using in your garden, maybe your nutrients? How are you aiming to be more sustainable with your nutrients? Sort of tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so when I got into growing cannabis to fill up the medicine cabinet and not have to buy, I decided to go with greenhouse and outdoor. And obviously, initially, the first thing you do is go grab a bottle out of the grow shop, because you're thinking you're just dealing with this. It's not the same as anything else, which it isn't. It's got its different requirements. But now, the more I've got into organic, I've gone into the KMF side, which is a huge, deep hole, which it's just been, getting better and better. The more I learn different techniques, the more, and it's just so great to be able to say I don't have to put more plastic back into the environment. I can get my nitrogen, I can get my potassium, I can get my phosphate, I can get my macro and micronutrients from plants with extractions and fermenting. So that's been great. The style is, I've basically, the outdoor, I've got nice fabric pots, nice big 300-liter fabric pots and 150s. They're great. I call it a Mendo style, like you see.
Yes. The big trees.
Nice big trees, we're allowed to grow X amount, so maybe make them big. Yeah. So it's been a journey. It's been awesome. Cannabis has really saved my life in many ways. And I've learned a lot from it. I've put that kind of information back into the vegetable garden. And understanding what plants I need to grow in companion and create a wide diversity in the garden to be able to be more sustainable.
Yes, and I know I'm just going to take a leap here, but Robbie, I saw in some of the images that we saw that you guys seem to do quite a bit of companion planting as well. Is it mostly organic farming that you guys are doing, or what's the nutrient style that you're making?
Yeah, well, California is very strict, so everything's organic, no chemicals. We are governed, and we have to report on everything we put into the soil and the water, obviously. So, especially being out here in the mountains. So, which is really nice because we've always been doing organic farming. We don't want to, smoke or use something that has chemicals in it. Yes, we use all different. We start off with amending the soil, putting all the good stuff in the soil, rebuilding the soil. And from there, we would use our weekly nutrient teas and foliar sprays, all organic based, all natural organic compounds and minerals that we brew in a giant tank using air. We actually do, I'm sure you guys are familiar with using air stones and air to actually, get these things going, get the microbes, becoming alive, etc. So, yeah. Everything is as clean as you. Most of the stuff back in the day, people were using lots of PPE, to protect themselves. But these days, it's really we do use it, obviously, to protect our body while we're spraying. But really, everything is so mild in terms of what we're giving the plant.
It's also more of an organic style, and I think I'll jump onto you next, Daniel. What kind of sort of nutrient style is your preferred method of cultivation?
Well, I mean,
on a personal scale, maybe, and then as white glove, what is sort of the type of nutrient that you suggest to some of your facilities? I think that would be interesting for our listeners.
I think, yeah. So the one that basically is going out to the facilities and to the more of the commercial grows or the bigger grows is generally going to be more of a basically synthetic growth. So you're going to have your bottles of your nutrients, which you're going to be using, and you're going to be, dosing them accordingly to make sure that there's consistency. When you're growing in that environment, you have to make sure that everything is repeatable and that there is traceability behind every single step, because unfortunately, where the people of South Africa that want to get into the game and start exporting the cannabis, it is going to a market where it requires severe scrutiny in what has happened to that plant and what has been grown in it. And they need to know that the nutrients that you're using have no chance of perhaps, bringing forth anything that you wouldn't want. Same as you wouldn't want to use any kind of hardcore pesticides. We don't use. I don't promote that. I promote IPM. So you would go with your Bavarial, your Metrial from Coppert. Coppert is a great company. They provide all kinds of the right, predatory mites and IPM that can help with pest management. So yeah, unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's just how it is. You have to be able to repeat it over and over and over and over 100,000 times in order to make sure that the end product is the same. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen in organics, because I love organics and I'm a true believer in true proper organics, and everyone has their own style of growing, but for my purpose of what I do, that is what is needed. I would love to set up facilities where we are allowed to use massive living beds, raised beds that have got all types of different techniques, from hugelkultur to layering, to cover crops, to all those kind of things. But unfortunately, when you have to grow in a GAP environment or GAP GAP, you got certain things that you have to maintain.
And thank you very much, Daniel. Very, very interesting. And Kwanda, do you want to jump in a little bit and explain to us a little bit about your nutrient sort of preference, and then I think we can maybe debate a little bit amongst ourselves before we chat about pest management. So Kwanda, what kind of methods are you making use of?
My method is organic. I grow in soil. Which is already pre-amended, dry amendments, that is, mainly like your vermicompost, worm castings, kelp, some volcanic rock dust, and a few other elements. And then in the nutrients, of course, that is nutrients in the soil itself. One could actually just grow the whole duration of a grow with what's already pre-amended in the soil that I use. But for better results and for attaining the kind of end results that I want, I do use organic derived nutrients on top of that, bottle nutrients as well. I also make some of my own nutrients. Ferments, KNF style, and basically for myself, what I've found with indoor growing is if with the organic approach, I don't rush my vegetative period, because organic does take a little bit longer to break down and to allow time for your microbial organisms to actually get to work and do the feeding do the exchange between your plant and your medium, basically. So yeah, I mean, I'm strictly organic because I believe in leaving as little bit of footprint as possible. No, I am indoors, so my medium is in fabric pots and it's not directly into the ground. But it doesn't mean I shouldn't, use that approach. And basically, My main reason behind that is the end result. I wouldn't want to grow something that eventually can have a side effect on myself or whoever else that maybe would try my bud. But yeah, basically I'm strictly organic, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Yeah.
I just quickly want to, just before we continue as well, Mamakai, you mentioned it first, so maybe you'd like to explain it to our listeners. But what is KNF for the people who don't know?
Okay, well, KNF is Korean natural farming. What it really is the principle behind it is plants feeding plants. So what you can use around you to obtain your macronutrients through extractions, plant material, through fruit, through herbs and other plants such as yarrow or red clover for your cover crops that you drop in. So Korean natural farming is quite a deep hole to go into.
Mama Kaya, before you continue, can you lean slightly closer to your microphone, please? The text chatting to us.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
Yeah.
No stress.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, the reason I say it is I've recently adopted some KNF principles in my own grows, and it's something that my client base at Marijuana SA is quite interested in as well. So I'm sure we'd have a lot of people on this webinar this evening who are interested. But I think just carrying on, I mean, I personally believe in both methods. You know, I've seen incredibly high quality bud grown on both sides. As Daniel was saying, you know, when you're looking at a GMP facility, sometimes, you know, going the full organic route isn't fully possible. But I think there's would everyone agree that there's space for both in the market, and that there isn't one preference or another? Daniel, if you maybe want to say what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, preference. I mean, I've smoked cannabis from both sides, from the synthetic side and from the organic side, and I can honestly say that they both have their own unique flavor, their own unique smell, look, everything. It's their own uniqueness. So to say the one is better than the other, I don't think you can. I think it's more about personal preference. So yeah, it is. No, I don't. My personal preference would be good bud.
Yes.
If the bud is good, I prefer if it's good and it's been grown well and there's been love and care put into it, and the person that was growing it didn't intentionally use things that they know they shouldn't be using in. For instance, pesticides that are going to that are going to harm you later on, or any or selling me bud that's got powdery mildew or something that's not good for me, then yes, I don't want that. But if it's good, it's good, and that's in the story for me.
No, 100%. But I also just wanted to say quickly, when you're thinking about nutrients or how you're going to grow, it doesn't just rely on kind of what nutrients you're going to be putting in. It also relies quite a bit on your substrates. You know, certain substrates work better with certain styles of growing. I think, Robbie, let's start with you. What kind of substrates are you guys using? Is it straight into the ground, or I know you said you are doing some reamendments? And then what are some, just on top of that as well, what are some popular sort of additives you guys are adding into, say, your soil and or your compost teas?
Okay, so yeah, were you growing in soil? Of course, the natural soil around here has got a high content of clay, so we dig out holes and we amend soil and put it in those holes, large, 400 to 500 liter holes, if you want to call it that. Yes. If not bigger. So yes, everything we're adding in is like what Kwanda had mentioned, the rock dusts, all the good stuff, different guanos, bat guano, llama guano, all strange things, all organic, natural, coming from reputable farms. Once we've amended the soil and we get to the teas, then we also would be using bottled substances that are OMRI or organic rated here in California. But you can also make your own compost tea, especially your home growers, which just take a small bucket, put an air stone in, and take a good organic compost and just let it sit for 24 to 48 hours. And that is a great additive. we also have an appellation starting. I don't know if people are familiar. An appellation basically would constitute this area or our area with a particular soil, with a particular product that comes out of it. And just like the champagne of champagnes, you know, or you know, we're trying to do the same thing here. So it's very important what we put into our, you know, our soil. Obviously, also that's groundwater travels and can affect the surrounding areas. So, you know, it's checked, the water's checked. We have to report continuously. And being a commercial grow, yes, we're very strict. But you know, I also feel like if someone wasn't using an organic method, all those, you know, heavy metals and pesticides do come through and will enter our bodies and could cause health problems, even though it might give you a good tasting bud and a great smoke, great flavor, good terpenes. You can, I feel that, you know, from a health side of it, of the earth and our personal bodies, it's very important to keep it as natural and organic as possible. But I do feel there are other substrates like Rockwell that grow excellently, or hydroponic, which is amazing, aquaponics, also amazing. But for our purposes here, we use good old soil.
And I think we can carry on the soil conversation a little bit before I give away some prizes. Mamakai, what kinds of soil substrates are you making use of? Do you make your own soils? Yeah, tell us a little bit more, please.
Yeah, so I try to keep the soil kind of basic. I use a lot of mushroom compost. I'm very lucky to have a mushroom farm just down the road from me. And all the spent mushroom compost comes out in these massive piles. You go pick it up and it's amazing stuff. So I add a lot of that in. I try to keep the amendments to as simple as possible. So yeah, and I've just started trying out, you know, living soil where my outdoor pots stay for the winter. Nothing gets changed. Do some cover cropping on it, put mulching on, keep it water, keep those microbes going, and collecting IMOs to add in to my soil as I go along. Lots of compost teas to help me along. Yeah, keep it pretty simple. I see a lot of guys use huge amendment lists like this that they throw in their soil. I keep it pretty basic, some rock dust, some lime, a little bit of lime, and what else do I put in? Yeah, some insect frays, you know, basic stuff. But then from there, it's all going, trying to get it in through my compost teas and my extracts.
And Daniel, thank you very much, Mamakai. And Daniel, more on the sort of on your commercial side experience. What's the sort of the preferred kind of substrate that you're making use of?
So in the commercials, well, in the larger scale side of things, you need to have something that is completely repeatable, so that every time you use it, it's exactly the same EC and pH, so that you never have any fluctuations starting off. So you've got options of in hydroponics, you have, starting at the oldest, one of the oldest, you have hydroton, which is basically clay pebbles, which people don't really use much in the larger scale. What people are using now is either rock wool or cocoa. Cocoa perlite mix is the most common used because it is
that's the 50-50 cocoa mix, cocoa perlite mix, something like that, or 70-30.
70-30, 90-10, obviously that's grow dependent and their preferences to how they like it. But yes, using cocoa and perlite is great for the water-air ratio that you get out of it. And the fact that you can never, ever overwater it. No matter how hard you try to overwater cocoa, you'll never be able to overwater it. So all that you're going to be doing is continuously balancing out the EC and the medium. So it's a great medium also when you're going in large scale, that if you do mess something up, you can flush it out immediately, meaning that you are not at risk of, you know, something happening to your whole entire crop. You can immediately fix what the problem is. So yes, cocoa perlite is the preferred medium for myself and for who I recommend to.
Excellent. And Kwanda did mention a little bit about his the way that he makes up his soil. Kwanda, before we move on to some prizes, do you have any closing thoughts on the nutrients? And then we can chat pest management for the last 20 minutes, which I'm sure is going to be interesting and I know is a big issue for a lot of growers. So Kwanda, any closing thoughts on substrates and nutrients?
No, no closing thoughts for me right now.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent. Let's move on then. Cool. So I have some prizes to give away this evening. The first set of prizes have been sponsored by Dutch Passion, which are 3 seed packs. Each pack is going to be containing 3 feminized seeds. I've been handed a list here of lucky winners, so I'm going to do my best to read them out. We've got Granny's Cannabis, who has won a pack of Dutch Passion's feminized seeds. We've had Malapela Nataleng, who's also won a Dutch Passion seeds. And then we have Joshua Johnson, who has also won a set of Dutch Passion seeds. And then I sponsored some merch for everyone as well. So my company, Marijuana SA, has also sponsored this evening. And Sean Nadan, you have won the prize from Marijuana SA. Congratulations to everyone. And I'm sure you will be contacted by the team afterwards. I hope you guys enjoy your prizes. And thanks so much for joining us this evening on our webinar. We're not done just yet. We have awesome guests with us, and we are now going to move on to the next conversational point, which Daniel has mentioned a little bit, but there's lots of different styles here as well. So I think let's hear a little bit about pest management. For me personally, I don't have such an issue with pests. I'm in a unique position where I've had quite a lot of powdery mildew in sort of my outdoor grows recently. So that's been something that I've learned to combat in my own specific microenvironment, and sort of, running a grow shop and dealing with people who are growing their own weed a lot of the time. Every solution is going to be unique because each person's environment that they're working in is unique as well. So something that works for me might not work for another, but there are some solid, I'm sure we're going to get some solid advice here today. If someone maybe wants to jump in with some pest management, who here is spraying, who's using some Jadam wetting agent, which is a new product I've discovered recently. Also kind of what's the regime? Should we start with Mama Kaya? You look keen to chat. So what kind of pest management regime do you follow, Mama Kaya?
Yeah, well, I'm in the same position as you, where I haven't had to deal with too much. Basically, PM is a real headache, I must say. I did find a formula for it that seems to work, which is a milk lactic acid bacteria mixture with vinegar. That seemed to help. The ASQF, I'm not too sure about it. It's basically another mold that eats off PM.
Yes.
So that has to be done weekly in order to, prevention is better than cure. And I've been finding it pretty difficult with the backpack sprayer to get through all those trees. So that sometimes doesn't get done on a weekly basis. So things come in. But again, going back to diversity, trying to encourage more insects and more bugs into your garden with your companion planting to create a better diversity in your garden to help you combat all these issues. Another one is these caterpillars, and they come from those white moths. Immediately when you see those moths coming out, you're going to get caterpillars. And aphids and mites. For the mites and the aphids being soft-bodied, I've been using Exterminator, which is basically L-limonene. So it smells like orange.
Yes, okay.
It's got a soapiness to it. It breaks down the barrier on the insect and kills them. That's been working very well as well. As year after year, the more diversity I've brought into my garden, so I've noticed it's getting better and better to control certain areas. But the PM is definitely a problem.
So you've built an environment that sort of promotes you've promoted a healthy environment with healthier pests over going more heavy into sort of a heavy spraying regime to combat pests.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's just, you can immediately see as soon as you get deeper and deeper into the organic side of things and diversity, trying to think, doesn't matter if you're in town or you're on a farm, try and create a full circle ecosystem in your garden through diversity, and that's, I've just seen amazing results. Again, I think Dan mentioned that Bert.
Yes.
They've got a nice range of predatory bugs now, which I'm going to start getting into a little bit more and buying in.
Yeah, on that point, Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about, you seem to have quite a bit of experience with the copper products. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the sort of I suppose that'd be bio insecticides. Yeah, can you give us a little bit more, please?
Well, it started with all growers, trying to figure out how to get rid of the PM, how to get rid of the spider mites, how to get rid of the thrips, how to get rid of the fungus gnats, how to get rid of the aphids. If it was something there, you had to try and get rid of it. And we don't want to use all the poisons that you get at the local nursery. It really is not good for people that, we look at it, it says for fruit, yes, you're going to spray it on the fruit and it's got a certain time that it breaks down and you wash it off, but it's not meant for smoking it as we do. Yes. So my quest to find things that it's a quest. It really was, because it was like, I just wouldn't use anything and it would just basically have to start from scratch. So looking around, I would then found out about the natural way, IPM. And when I found about IPM, it was a game changer. So I now have basically committed to using only IPM in my garden and in any grow that I set up, because I found that it works. And copper, like Mamaka was saying, they have this huge range of things that you can use. And I'll just name 4 products that I use and I've recommend to most people. One is Bavarial, which is Bavaria bassania. It's one of the products which you would spray. There's another one called Metrial, and then another one, Veni Biosulfur. For anyone that has a PM problem, sulfur is the most oldest game. It's been used for years and years and years in many industries, so it does work. And if you apply it the right time, it is fine for cannabis, I believe. And from what I've read and from what I've really done extensive research that I can, you just cannot spray it, say, a week before harvesting. Yes, that is ridiculous. You cannot do that. There's a limit to these things. And if you go past it, if you unfortunately have something wrong too far into your flowering stage, unfortunately, you have to pay that schooling fee and just deal with it and start again. But yeah, try it. Copper, try IPM, try the natural way. Get away from the poison, stop spraying poison onto the earth, because that's one way we can definitely help.
Yeah, I think on that point, spraying, you're kind of aiming to go into your flower period as pest-free as possible, because the further you get into flower, the less options you a lot of the time do have. Robbie, let's move on to you next. Can you give us a little bit more information about the kinds of techniques that you guys are making use of?
Yeah, so very similar to what everyone's mentioned. We are in the forest, so we have a lot of elements here, from fencing for larger predators like deer to but everything's preventative. So we start with your microorganisms, your beneficials, your mycorrhizas, your everything is put into the soil and sprayed on a continuous basis, whether you have pests or not. I mean, you're going to get pests. The natural microorganisms is a great way. We also spray for PM, very interesting. We spray different natural, one's called Streptomyces laudicus. I don't know, the product here is called Actinovate. I don't know if you have a similar product. Basically all natural, parasitic microorganisms. Also, one thing that we use a lot of here in terms of pesticides is oils, natural essential oils. Of course, essential oils can burn your plants, burn your leaves if they're in the sun. We spray only at night. We spray once a week. We let those oils dry so that the next day we don't have burning of the leaves.
Can you tell us about some
sulfur that you mentioned?
Just before we carry on, Robbie, what kinds of sort of natural oils? Any plants specifically?
You name it, from peppermint oil to garlic oil to geranium oil, across the board. All these oils, insects do not like any of these things, but the biggest problem being that it could damage your plant. You definitely wouldn't want to spray oils on your bud. It's gonna do some sort of a damage when the sun hits it. But a big one is the micronized sulfur. We do that 2 weeks. As soon as you see your first hairs come out, we spray the sulfur, because sulfur has got a really bad smell and it does stick with those plants a long time. But across the board, it does wonders for the plant. And wear your PPE when spraying these things, also very important. Yes. But yeah, we try to keep it as natural as possible. And even to the effect, there's a product they're using for PM, which is acetic acid. It sounds like you've got something similar with the limonene that you were mentioning. So acetic acid does kill soft-bodied insects. And yeah, everything's pretty similar, which is actually really interesting to me, coming from two separate markets.
Yes, very
but we've all got the same problems, it sounds like.
And Kwanda, let's hop on to you. What kind of pest regime or spraying regime do you follow? What tips do you have for us this evening?
Of course, organic. And for myself, I like to prevent. So preventative measures are very important. The most important aspect to my IPM that I believe in is your physical inspections. So daily physical inspections. And then, of course, for preventative measures, I start in early veg with just a simple lactic acid bacteria spray. And then as the plant progresses and from veg right up into just before flower, I'll use your bio-neem together with bio-trichol, bio-insect, and some AQSF. The AQSF I will use sometimes early in flowering stage if I'm starting to have powdery mildew problems. Currently, like everybody's plagued with PM, doesn't matter how good your ventilation is, whatever dehumidifiers you have in your room, it just pops up. So there are times where I have to use spray during flower, and that's why I prefer to stick to your organics, because if you are like spraying them in flower, it's that I'm not going to damage my plants, and I'm not going to damage the end result in terms of your residuals at the end of your grow, because most of your bio and organic pesticides do evaporate off the plant, like your AQSF, bio-neem. I actually have experienced a couple of growers using bio-neem and AQSF together with bio-trichol, like late into flower, like 6 weeks in, and they just washed the bud at the end of the grow and they cured for longer. And that bio-neem evaporated out, the bio-trichol and your AQSF. So preventative measures, physical inspections are most important. Yeah, that's basically it.
Excellent. So I think it's like Robbie was saying, it's very interesting for me to sit here this evening and to hear all the different, a very similar kind of technique across our two different markets. Robbie has joined us from America, so it's highly exciting. We are basically at the end of our presentation, so I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Does anyone have any closing statements that they'd like to say to our awesome South African market and hopefully abroad that's listening this evening?
No, I just wanted to say, just like we had earlier from the Hotbox show, it's really great what you guys are doing and bringing this out to people and basically normalizing the plant and educating people more into, what it is that we are also keenly interested in, why this can change a lot of people's lives and help people. So yeah, well done to you guys at Chiba, and yeah, keep these summits happening, please.
Yeah, we most definitely will, and it's amazing to be able to share all of this different information. Cannabis traditionally, Robbie spoke of a similar experience. We were in the dark. You were having to do stuff that you probably wouldn't have talked about much. So to be able to share all these different techniques, and what I also find interesting about the cannabis industry, because of that fact, a lot of people do have their own techniques that sort of worked for them for years. So even though we all spoke about slightly different techniques this evening, we're all trying to achieve the same thing at the end, and that's a high quality bud that's free from anything that's going to damage us. And at the end of the day, is a quality medicine that didn't really damage the earth to produce. And yeah, I'm really thankful that all of you have joined us this evening. Thank you to Robbie for joining us all the way from America, from Villa Paradiso Cannabis Farm. Thank you to Daniel for joining us, Daniel Perkas from White Glove Botanicals. Thank you so much to Mama Kaya from Mama Kaya Farms. And thank you so much to Kwanda Mtetwa from Cuban Zulu Grows. I've really enjoyed having all of you on this webinar this evening. I just have a few closing things I would like to say before we all do knock off. The Craft Cannabis Summit, which is being hosted by Chiba, does carry on tomorrow as well. This has been a 2-day event. Chiba Africa is a South African cannabis university, and we've really brought this trying to bring as much information as possible. And the event which I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, which is at 11 a.m., is a chat on large-scale growing, which kind of continues a little bit on kind of the conversation which we were having today. So that's going to be quite interesting to tune into. But yes, from my side, I just want to say thank you again to everyone, and a special thank you also to Dutch Passion for sponsoring all of those beans this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. That was our webinar on lighting, nutrients, and pest management. Awesome, guys.